This influencer's body parts were found in pots of human soup just last month. On the 15th of February, 28-year-old model Abby Choi posted a beautiful photo on her Instagram. She had no idea of her horrific fate less than 2 weeks later. On February the 25th, 2023, police made a horrifying discovery. A splatter-proof makeshift butcher's workshop was found in a rented 3-story home. Inside of the home, they found 2 human legs in a fridge and Abby's decapitated head in a soup pot. Alongside the head, carrots and radishes were also in the process of being cooked. Minced human meat was also found at the scene. In the rented flat, police found a homemade butcher's shop equipped with meat grinders, chainsaws, and meat cleavers. Abby's handbag was also found at the scene, including her ID, which helped to identify her. Heartbreakingly, Abby was a mother of 4 young children. Police in Hong Kong have charged Abby's ex-husband, Alex Kwong, his father and brother with the murder. It's alleged that the 3 men rented an apartment where they'd meticulously planned the murder. It's also alleged that the motive for the killing was a family dispute over money. Abby's children are now being looked after by her mother.
The co-founder of Salt Life was recently sentenced for the killing of his girlfriend. The man I'm about to talk about is literally the reason you see all of these stickers. He coined the term Salt Life and co-founded the company. In October of 2020, 54-year-old Michael Hutto booked a room at an oceanfront resort on Singer Island. And with him was his 18-year-old girlfriend, Laura Grace Duncan, who had just graduated from high school months prior. After spending time at the beach, the couple went back to the hotel room. According to Michael, they were playing around and started to pretend to shoot each other with finger guns. Then Michael pulled out a real gun. He said Grace was sitting on the bathroom counter when he pointed the gun at her and it went off. He claimed it was an accident. Instead of calling 911, Michael left with the weapon and a backpack, while Grace was left bleeding to death on the bathroom floor. He also left his wallet and ID behind. He then drove 280 miles to a gas station. He reportedly walked in and asked the attendant for help. He was also twitching, crying, and making delusional comments, and his eyes were rolling into the back of his head. Michael was taken to the hospital for a reported overdose. By the following morning, Grace's parents hadn't heard from her for 48 hours. And on the morning of the 29th, Grace's father asked for a welfare check. He tracked her phone to the hotel. Even from down the hallway, the police could tell that there was a decomposing body inside of that hotel room, because Grace had been left there for hours and hours. She was fatally shot in the stomach by Michael. When police went back to the hospital to talk to Michael, he immediately started confessing. He said, "Oh my God, I think I hurt my Gracie." He was arrested the next day after being discharged from the hospital for manslaughter and a weapons violation. So you're probably wondering how an 18-year-old girl and a man in his mid-50s got into a relationship. Michael was married with 4 children when he met Grace at a gym where she worked. I don't know how long the relationship had been going on by October of 2020, but on the 25th, she texted her parents that she and Michael were traveling to meet his friends. And the point of that was those friends could help them start a business. Grace's parents reported her missing the next day. Officers came to their house, and Grace called her parents while they were there. Over the phone, she reportedly said that everything was fine, but her parents said she sounded drugged and vulnerable. Grace called her parents one last time to say that they were headed for the Keys, and it would be just a couple days later that she would be found deceased in Michael's hotel room. Last week, Michael pleaded guilty to manslaughter, and he was sentenced to 12 years in
I'm gonna be honest, this is a really disturbing case. Hi, my name is Ethan, and here's everything you need to know in under 1 minute. On January 24th of this year, Lindsay Clancy was a nurse in Massachusetts. She was married and had 3 beautiful children. According to reports, she had recently had a baby who was 7 months old at the time, and she was suffering from postpartum. On just an ordinary day, her husband Patrick had left her alone with the children while he went out and ran errands. While he was gone, something in Lindsay snapped, and she allegedly unalived her 3 children with an exercise band and then jumped off the roof. Surprisingly, she survived and is now paralyzed from the waist down. Her husband even started a GoFundMe where he raised a little over $1 million to cover funeral costs, medical bills, and legal fees. He even made a statement that not 1 cent of the GoFundMe money has been given to Lindsay for her attorney fees. Lindsay was supposed to appear in court on May 1st, however, it was moved to July 25th of this year.
In 2018, Cameron Herron was driving at 100 miles per hour. And unfortunately, he hit a 24-year-old lady with her 1-year-old baby. And this is Cameron's reaction when he gets sentenced to 24 years in prison. Follow for more, and please let me know what your thoughts are on this.
This killer accidentally admitted to his crimes by accident when he forgot he was wearing a microphone while taking part in a documentary. This is how a true crime documentary exposed a killer. In 1971, Robert Durst met Kathleen McCormack and they got married. At the time of her disappearance in 1982, Kathleen had nearly graduated college. She was last seen by a witness at a dinner party where she appeared to be upset. She got a call from Robert and left. Robert admitted to having argued with Kathleen that night, but he said he put her on a train to New York and then never saw her again. Her friend called police to report her missing. Interestingly, Kathleen had been treated at a medical centre for facial bruises weeks prior to this and told the friend that Robert had done it. Robert had actually been dating someone else for some time prior to this and had been living separately to Kathleen. When her family broke into her cottage to try and find out where she was, they found the place had been trashed and her possessions put in the bin. Kathleen's family always believed that Robert was involved in her disappearance. In 2000, Susan Berman, a friend of Robert's, was found murdered. Now, she'd actually provided Robert with an alibi for Kathleen's disappearance. Now, pay really close attention to this next bit. Days after she was killed, a letter addressed to the Beverly Hills Police Department contained Susan's address and the word cadaver on it. On the envelope, Beverly was misspelled. Robert admitted in 2005 that Susan had called him shortly before her death to say that the police wanted to question her about Kathleen going missing. It's believed that Robert killed Susan to keep her quiet. In 2001, Robert's neighbour's body parts were found floating in Galveston Bay. Robert's elderly neighbour, Morris Black, had been killed and Robert was arrested. He was actually released on bail and fled and was found about a month later in Pennsylvania. He was found with $37,000 cash, 2 weapons, and interestingly, Morris Black's driving license. In court, Robert claimed he was acting in self-defense. He said he'd accidentally shot Morris and dismembered his body. Due to lack of forensics, he only got 5 years in jail. This is where things get really crazy. HBO was filming a documentary called The Jinx. During production, Susan's stepson found a letter written by Robert. This contained the same spelling error in the word Beverly as the anonymous letter to police. This implicated Robert in the murder. Now, while filming the documentary, Robert needed the toilet. He forgot that he had a microphone still attached to him. He was recorded talking to himself. He said, "There it is, you're caught. You're right, of course, but you can't imagine. Arrest him." And then he said, "What a disaster. He was right. I was wrong." And finally he said, "I'm having difficulty with the question. What the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course."
Recent missing people cases, the case of Yangyang Zhang. Yangyang Zhang was born on the 21st of December 1990 in Fushan, China. She was a successful academic in the field of biology and in 2017 travelled to the United States to conduct research on photosynthesis at the University of Illinois. She was engaged and planned to marry her fiancé in October 2017 once her year of research was complete. On the 9th of June in 2017, Yangyang had a meeting at a property complex where she planned to sign a lease for a brand new apartment. But unfortunately, she would never make it to this appointment. Yangyang needed to transfer buses to make it to the complex. She successfully caught her first bus but then missed her second. She was on the wrong side of the street and so the bus didn't stop after she attempted to flag it down. The district later stated that it would have been against their policy to stop as it encourages pedestrians to run into oncoming traffic. Yangyang sent a text to the leasing agent at 1:39 p.m. to let them know that she'd be running late and that she'd arrive around 2:10 p.m. Whilst Yangyang was waiting for the next bus, at around 2 p.m. a black Saturn Astra passed her at the bus stop. The car then did a U-turn and stopped where she was waiting at 2:03 p.m. After about a minute, she then got in the car and the car drove off. Her leasing agent then sent a text to her at 2:38 p.m, but Yangyang never responded. She was then reported missing that evening at 9:24 p.m. The local police department worked closely with the FBI to try and locate Yangyang. They eventually offered a reward of $50,000 to anybody who knew anything about her whereabouts. And her family arrived in the US on the 17th of June hoping to aid in the investigation. At first, the surveillance footage was too blurry for police to identify the number plate, but they identified 18 vehicles like the one in the video in the local area. One of these cars belonged to 27-year-old Brent Allen Christensen, who was a former PhD student at Illinois University. He was in an open marriage with his wife that he married in 2011 and a girlfriend. Investigators soon interviewed Brent, who said he couldn't remember where he was the day of Young Young's disappearance. Further analysis of the CCTV footage revealed that the car's sunroof was similar to Brent's, and it had a cracked hubcap which was noted on Brent's car as well. Investigators also noticed that the passenger's side door appeared to have been cleaned to a more diligent extent than the other vehicle doors. Brent's girlfriend was so certain of his innocence that she agreed to wear a recording device to try and clear his name. But Brent confessed to his girlfriend whilst on a memorial walk for Young Young that he had taken her to his apartment and held her there before murdering her. He also admitted to being a serial killer. And supposedly Young Young was his 13th victim. Brent was found guilty and charged to a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Sadly, due to the severity of the crime, it was not possible to retrieve Young Young's body. And no other victims of Brent Christensen have been found. Be sure to follow for more true crime.
This is my sister Cody, and she has a wild story that I have asked her to share with you. Cody, can you please tell the world who the old lady is?
The old lady is this woman who lives in my apartment building.
Okay, and how did you meet her?
I met her on 4th of July of 2022. I saw her outside one night, all alone, so I decided to talk to her, make conversation since I'd never talked to her before.
And you felt bad she was alone on the holiday, right?
Yeah, so I just had a normal conversation, I told her my name, we were just talking about our lives a little bit, getting to know each other. And
Except there was one weird thing about the conversation. What did she say about your apartment?
She started asking me questions about the pictures on my walls and the figurines in my windowsill.
Someone she has never spoken to before, okay?
Yeah, that's when I realized she was watching me and memorizing everything about me and my life and my schedules.
Okay, but the conversation overall went fine until the next day.
Yeah, the next evening I was just sitting in my apartment and I started to hear something outside, and I looked and I realized it was the old lady. She was screaming my name outside. She was saying, "Cody, Cody, come outside," for at least an hour.
Can you imagine sitting in your apartment in the middle of the night and someone starts calling out your name? Cody.
It was really creepy.
But how many times did she say it? Just like...
Over and over again. She knew I was in there, so she wasn't gonna stop.
Because she could see you through your window.
Yeah. And then I didn't go down, obviously.
Right.
So she got two
like,
big...
I don't want to talk right now.
She got two big rocks on the ground and she started banging them on the walls of our building and scraping them together, and it sounded like she was scraping them on the sidewalk trying to get my attention.
And you heard this from your apartment, right?
Yes, I did, and it scared me, so I didn't go talk to her.
She's on the second floor, by the way. This lady was down on the, obviously outside on the ground.
Yeah. So eventually she gave up because I didn't go talk to her, and the next morning when I went outside, I saw that she had carved my name into the sidewalk with a big rock.
And it didn't end here, okay? Like, that to you and me, right? Like, that's bad enough. Cody has dealt with this for months and it just gets scarier and scarier. So, like, how long after that did she, like, come to your apartment in the middle of the night?
I'd say it was a couple days,
Ooh.
maybe a week.
So scary.
She stood outside yelling for me multiple times, and I never gave in, so she started knocking on my door in the middle of the night, and I told...
The family of this missing girl found out via the media that she'd been murdered, butchered and sold as kebab meat. This case will put you off ever eating a kebab again. Charlene Downs disappeared aged just 14 years old in November 2003. She was living in Blackpool, UK, and was last seen in an area containing many kebab shops and takeaways. While out with her friends one night, Charlene bumped into her mum. Her mum said that Charlene needed to be home by 10 PM that night, which was quite typical for Charlene. Tragically, this would be the last time that her mum would ever see Charlene alive. When Charlene didn't turn up by 10 PM, her dad went out on his bike looking for her for around half an hour. When he couldn't find her, he just presumed that she'd stayed over at her friend's house and went home and went to sleep. When she still didn't arrive the next morning, her parents started to get worried and they called police. Police, however, said that they could not report this as a missing person until she'd been missing for 48 hours. Eventually, police did start to look for her, but they said that they presumed she was a runaway. The case went cold until 3 years later. Charlene's family were called into a police station. There was news of 2 men who had been arrested, linked with a local takeaway called Funny Boys. They were arrested on suspicion of murder and disposal of Charlene. This is when the family found out some shocking news via the media about what had happened to Charlene. An article published stated that she had been grinded up and sold as kebab meat. One of the brothers of the men who had been arrested had heard them bragging about doing this. Now, Charlene's disappearance actually unearthed the fact that these takeaways were being used as a front for pee rings, where men were luring teenagers in with food and alcohol in exchange for things I cannot repeat on this app. When the case against these 2 men went to trial, the jury failed to reach a verdict. The case was then thrown out of court due to apparent lack of physical evidence. One of the reasons for this is how well Charlene's body had obviously been disposed of. Both men who had been charged were given a £250,000 compensation for being falsely trialled. Around a week after the trial, Charlene's mum was actually arrested for stabbing her husband. He declined to press charges, saying that he knew she had been stressed. Members of the family were also charged with racially aggravated assault against the brother of the man who'd been charged with murder, and also punching the man who'd been charged with helping dispose of her body. In August 2017, police arrested a 51-year-old man who lived in Blackpool at the time of Charlene's disappearance. This was on suspicion of murdering her, however, he was released just 2 days later. We still have no justice for Charlene and nobody is behind bars for her case.
Wholesome facts that'll make your day slightly better, Part 1. When a human sees a puppy, a chemical called dopamine is released in the brain. Elephants also release dopamine when they see people, meaning that they think we're cute in the same way we think puppies are cute. There's a YouTube channel called Dad, How Do I that teaches young people things that would typically be taught by a father figure. From how to change a tire to how to tie a tie, fans of the channel think it's super helpful. When you're on a walk with your dog and they stop to take a dump, you may notice that your fluffy friend is staring at you as they poop. They do this because they're in a defenseless position and they're trusting you to keep them safe. There are more public libraries in the US than McDonald's. After the horrific events of 9/11, a small Kenyan tribe known as the Maasai people gave 14 cows to the US in their support. The man who played Mickey Mouse ended up marrying the woman who played Minnie Mouse, meaning that true love actually exists.
After a final year student lost his life due to poor medical facility, negligence, and wait for it, stupidity. It was said that the victim, 22-year-old Bruno Leo, slumped during a football match and was immediately rushed to the school hospital, where they said the doctor was unsure what to do because they weren't equipped with handling such a situation. And so Bruno was referred to another hospital outside of school. Although some sources claim that it was the student themselves that chose to take him to a hospital outside of school, the bottom line was that they needed to take him outside of school to get a proper medical attention, since the school can't provide it. Now, this is where the stupid part comes in, because when the student got to the gate of the school to exit the school compound, the security personnel prevented them from going out, saying they needed an exit card or a permission from the school's rep or whoever that was. Of course, in a normal day, it is necessary before students leave the school to seek permission. But this was a special case. A young man was fighting for his life. And yet the security people were like, they all can't live with him because they needed a proper permission slip or something before they will be let out to take this young man to the hospital. Eventually, though, they were able to secure the permission on shore, but then when Leo was taken to a hospital outside of school, he was confirmed dead. And now the students are outraged. They are angry, they are frustrated because they believe if the school had proper medical facility, Bruno's chances of surviving would have been higher.
As As someone who really likes to go on solo hikes, this story really made me question my decisions. Hi, my name is Ethan, and here's everything you need to know in under 1 minute. On Saturday, April 29th, 2023, Lauren Heike was hiking in North Phoenix, Arizona, when she was attacked from behind by 22-year-old Zion Teasley. Based on the state of her clothes and body, it was determined that she did try to fight off her attacker, and she even was chased through barbed wired fence. When police arrived, they discovered that Lauren was unalived and had 15 stab wounds. At first, they thought this was a personal attack, being that there was 15 stab wounds. However, after pulling surveillance footage, that is where they saw Zion. His DNA was even found on her shoes, and a weapon he had matched her wounds. On May 4th, police arrested him in his apartment, and it is unclear what his motive is, but he did tell police that he was Christian and struggled with his sexuality. He even stated, and I quote, "If I was going to do something like that, it wouldn't be premeditated."
In early September of 2018, a 40-year-old man in northern India named Mahipal Singh was making his way home from a day of merrymaking in town, where he had indulged in quite a few adult beverages. As he was kind of stumbling his way down the road back towards his house, he saw something on the side of the road that really piqued his interest, and he bent down and picked it up. It was a baby snake. It was probably only 10 or so inches long, maybe a foot long, but very small snake. We don't know exactly what the species was, but we do know it was a venomous one, so maybe a baby cobra. But anyways, he is very intrigued by it, and for whatever reason, so are the passersby and people that are with him. People are stopping and they're taking out their phones and they're filming him playing around with this little snake. And people are asking him to kind of do crazy stuff with it, twirl it around. And he's doing it. He's really, seeming to enjoy the attention he's getting from handling this venomous snake. At some point, he puts the snake down, and one of the guys taking one of the videos, he takes like a stick and he's poking and flips the snake over. The poor snake is obviously clearly really agitated. It actually is striking out a couple times at Mahipal when he reaches back down to pick it back up. But either its mouth is too small or it misses, but either way, it doesn't seem to actually bite him. But Mr. Singh, he picks the snake back up, and again, people are just goading him on to do crazier and crazier stuff. At one point, somebody asks him to put it on his head, which he does, and then somebody asks him, "Hey, put it in your mouth." And Mr. Singh, apparently, he concedes, okay, so he puts it in his mouth head first, at which point this little viper apparently decides this is its perfect chance to escape. Snakes will often go into tight, dark areas to try and get away, and apparently Mahipal's throat looks like just the place. So this thing starts wriggling, squirming. It gets out of the grip of Mr. Singh's fingers and slithers right down his throat, fast. Now, he's freaking out. He's trying to regurgitate this thing, but the snake is not coming back out. He eventually ends up vomiting. But again, the snake is now nestled down in his stomach, and it's not going anywhere. He would go home after that, but very quickly he would start to feel very, very ill. But by the time his family rushed him to the hospital a few hours later, it was too late. He had so much venom in his system, he died 4 hours after initially swallowing that snake. It's unclear whether the snake was biting at the insides of him in his stomach, or if it was just the fact that he was digesting it, and its venom just was released into his system. Either way, it is never advisable to put reptiles in your mouth, as they carry salmonella and various other things, but also it's a snake and a venomous one, so just don't do that.